Hello, hi, and welcome to this episode of the Mandy Mayer podcast. As per usual, this is the podcast where we chat all about your health, fitness, and fat loss goals and how you can achieve them without doing anything drastic and simplifying the process for yourself so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. I didn't actually have a planned topic of conversation for today. So what I usually do is I write down a couple of topics of conversation based on the questions that I get in my DMs, and then I chat about that topic so that you guys can continue learning about everything health and fat loss, especially based on the questions that you do ask in my DMs. But I think this week everyone's on leave already, so there hasn't been very many questions that have been asked. So I thought to myself, what am I going to chat about? What am I going to chat about? Because oftentimes it feels like I'm chatting about the same things over and over again, which, by the way, I have no problem doing. I love chatting about these things so much. And I know that every single time I chat about something, even though it is the same thing, I may say it in a different manner, and maybe you just have that penny drop moment the second or the third time you hear it. But today I don't have a planned topic of conversation, and I thought, what am I going to chat about? And I'm currently at the point where I'm just getting back into my running, and yeah, it's difficult. It is difficult getting back into it from a physical perspective because I'm not fit. I'm not at the point where I was, say, last year this time, for example. Actually, no, it's longer than last year this time. And that brought me to this topic of conversation as to how I lost my fitness and what I'm doing to rebuild that fitness. And I'm hoping that by sharing my story, some of you can maybe relate, or you can take away from it, or it can just help you start creating that consistency by, when you're getting back into doing something or when you're starting to do something difficult. So actually what I'm going to chat about in this episode is how I went from being super fit to being diagnosed with endometriosis stage 4. And now you're probably thinking, okay, but how do you lose your fitness when you've got endometriosis? And story time, let's get into it. Grab a cup of coffee before we get into it. Coffee, tea, a water, whatever you want, because this might be a little bit of a long story. I don't know. Let's see where it goes. As mentioned, last year I was super fit. I ran 2 Oceans Ultra, which is a 56-kilometer road running race. And I was just at the fittest, I want to say the fittest that I'd been in a very, very long time. I was super consistent with my training. I could run distances that were scared of nothing. And I was super disciplined with just getting those runs in, getting that exercise in, and I was feeling on top of the world. Fast forward to October last year, and I just finished running Cape Town Marathon, and it was amazing because I qualified for 2 Oceans for this year, and I just ran a very good race. And shortly after that, so that was October last year, shortly after that, I felt this little niggle in my left groin, and I was like, little bit of a niggle. Maybe I just pulled something when I was running. I'm like, and I let it go for a little bit, November, I was like, let me just go to the doctor and chat to the doctor about it and see what the doctor has to say. Because every time I was running, it wasn't necessarily sore when I was running, but it was sore afterwards. And sometimes when I was sleeping, it was sore as well. And this pain was just not going away. It would flare up, then it would go away, and oftentimes would flare up after exercise. So I go to the doctor in November and I sit there, and immediately he says to me, what activities do you do? I'm like, well, I run and I do gym workouts. And he's like, do you lift weights? And I said, yes, I lift weights. So immediately based on, I want to say, my activity levels, he put 2 and 2 together and he said to me, oh, it could be abdominal tendonitis. And I'm like, abdominal tendonitis, he's the doctor here. So I was like, okay, what do I do about abdominal tendonitis? And immediately I got issued anti-inflammatories and told to rest for a little bit. I was like, okay, I can do that. Not ideal because now we're approaching December and it's fun to run in December in Cape Town, except the wind. But other than that, the weather is amazing. Anyway, so I take a bit of a rest, 2 or 3 weeks as advised by the doctor, take the anti-inflammatories, and then I go for a run again. I get back into the gym and I went for a bike ride as well, and this pain just came back and it was there. I'm like, So December, I went for a second opinion, and I go for a second opinion, and the doctor said to me, but Mandy, there's nothing in that area. Like, there's nothing in that area that is causing pain. And she just said to me, it's tendinitis. So now I've got two doctors who saying it's tendinitis. Again, issued anti-inflammatories and told rest, okay? And immediately I was told it's because I've got that go big or go home mentality, which I do agree with, right? I do have that mentality, but I also knew that something was not right within my body because I'd never experienced a niggle like that in that area after any exercise. I had no idea what fucking abdominal tendinitis is meant to feel like. I have no idea what groin tendinitis is meant to feel like. So here I am popping anti-inflammatories whole of December last year, not exercising. Then January, I get back, go for a run. All of a sudden, the same shit. Now it starts flaring up even more and even more. And I'm like, no, man, this can't be like, if it's tendinitis, okay, and I've rested now for a good period of time, this shouldn't be the case. I shouldn't be feeling that little bit of a niggle. So in January, I go back to the doctor. I'm like, listen, yeah, sister, this pain is still here. And my question to both of these doctors was, should I go and see my gynae? Should I go to a gynae and just get everything checked out? Because I said to them, it really resembles the pain of ovulation. Should I go and get it checked out? And I was questioned as to, is it only there when you ovulate? And I said, no, it's there on a regular basis now. And I couldn't pinpoint when and where the exact pain was. It was so weird. It was like, and I started doubting myself now because I'm like, is it really a pain? Like, am I just imagining things? And immediately the doctor said to me, no, I'm just going to be wasting my money if I go and see a gynae. I was like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, it's my money to waste. And I just wanted peace of mind, okay? And I wanted peace of mind because going through everything with my mom when she was diagnosed with cancer last year, I just learned that you don't let little niggles linger, right? So I was like, cool. I booked an appointment with a different gynae, not my normal gynae. And I went to her and I explained this to her because she specialized in a number of other things. And I'm like, okay, let's kill two birds with one stone here. And she didn't pick up anything with regards on the transvaginal ultrasound. She didn't pick up anything out of the norm. I explained to her a couple of my symptoms as well. Now, it had escalated from being only a niggle in the left groin after exercise to a niggle in the left groin on a consistent basis, right? But every time after I did exercise, it would flare up. So we can see where the little bit of confusion is coming in here, right? Because if I'm presenting this to the doctors, I totally understand why there can be that confusion, right? Then this gynae was questioning me about my activity and the activity levels. And again, I started thinking, I'm like, maybe I am just making this pain up. Anyway, so now I get sent for x-rays. I go for the x-rays. There's a couple of other things that have been picked up, right? So a little bit of a dysplasia in the hip. So there is that as well, okay? Now we've got, we see it could be a hip problem. Now I'm like, oh shit. Now all of a sudden I have to go first I went for an ultrasound a while before that because I'd seen a physio about it. And so she was like, let's get an ultrasound done. There was nothing on the ultrasound. Now the x-ray picked up a little bit, slight, minor hip dysplasia. So then I went to another doctor because the doctor I had been seen at that stage was on 3 weeks leave and I wanted to get this shit sorted, okay? And this other doctor said to me, no, this is definitely a running related injury. You need to rest and yeah, I'm going to refer you to an orthopedic surgeon. Okay, I was like, oh, and now this is probably, we're looking at, I don't even know, April side, maybe May side. Then I was like, you know what, before I go to the orthopedic surgeon, I'm just going to go do a mountain bike race. And I went and did this mountain bike race and I was in excruciating pain after that. And here's the thing, after that mountain bike race, I was in excruciating pain. I had slightly abnormal bleeding and I was like, this is not normal, right? And in my mind, I'm like, this is not a sports injury. Like I know my menstrual cycle. I know ovulation spotting. I know ovulation pain. And I was like, okay, but my appointment with the orthopedic surgeon is booked now. So I have to go and explore that option as well because there is that slight hip dysplasia in the x-rays, which I went and then I had to go for an MRI, and I went for this MRI, and the MRI showed again slight minor hip dysplasia, and the surgeon said to me it's not enough to warrant surgery. And he said to me, go to physio for 3 months, and in those 3 months you should really see an improvement. Now I was like, okay, in my mind I just know my body, and I knew something was not right. So I go to the physio though, because I'm like, I'm following the professional's advice here, okay? What I maybe have left out is every single person that I went to, I brought up, the female reproductive system, because in my mind, you always have that gut feeling, right? In my mind, I'm like, why was there abnormal bleeding? Why am I paining the same as when I'm paining during ovulation? Now, it's not only during ovulation, it's consistent. It's fucking 24/7 that I'm in pain, even when I'm not doing activity. So I do the physio work, physio picks up, I really do have a weak left-hand side, and that's where the pain is at. So I'm like, oh my goodness, it is something to do with the hip. But in my mind, I'm like, no, it's something to do with my female reproductive system. Then all of a sudden, one day, whilst I was busy with the physio, well, not busy, I wasn't busy with him at that point. By the way, the physio that I had was absolutely amazing. Like, he's just such a lacquer oak. Anyway, so we digress. So during that phase or that stage, I then felt really dizzy. Like, I was feeling so dizzy. I was walking to the shop and I was feeling fatigued. I was feeling dizzy. I wouldn't even know how to explain it. Like, the whole world was spinning, but I was standing still. And I'm like, this is not normal. And I remember that morning I was doing a Facebook Live with my clients, with my group that I had at that stage. And I actually had to try and sit or hold on to the desk because it felt like my whole computer was spinning as well. Immediately after that, I got an Uber and I went to the doctor and I explained the situation to the doctor. And she ran some blood tests on me. Another strange thing that had happened was, and I mentioned again to her, I'm having abnormal bleeding. It's not a lot. It was a very small amount. And as much as it came after the mountain bike race or at any other given time, most of the time when it was happening was just before ovulation. So immediately everyone was saying to me, but it's just ovulation spotting. And I'm like, but I've never spotted that like that during ovulation. But it's so difficult to explain. And another weird thing that happened was the one day, and this is going to sound horrible, so maybe a little bit disgusting or crude, but I have to mention it because it's all part of it. I went to the loo and I was wiping, and there was blood, a little bit of blood, and it wasn't coming from the front hole, right? It was coming from the bum hole area. And I'm like, this is not normal. Like, this is not normal. Something is not right here. So I brought that up with the doctor as well. And the doctor said to me, it could just be a little bit of piles. Okay. I was like, okay, it could be piles. I'm like, we'll go with that for now. But she ran blood tests and it turned out that my iron levels were very, very low. Hence why I was feeling dizzy and immediately she said to me, it's my diet. And I said, but I'm getting sufficient iron in my diet. I know, and I know that for a fact. And I brought up the fact, I'm like, is it because my periods are maybe very, very heavy, right? I had heavy periods. And she's like, well, it could be. I'm like, well, is it not the pain in my groin and the spotting around ovulation or after heavy exercise? I'm like, is it not all linked together? And now all of a sudden a little bit of, blood in that area where it's not meant to be. Even though it was only a once-off occurrence, it's still sat in my mind that I have to get this checked out. So immediately I went and I did, on my own, I went and I did a stool test to find out if there was any blood in the stool, and there wasn't, right? So now I'm sitting there and I'm like, no, fuck it. I'm going back for another gynae checkup, who, by the way, I had seen in October the year before, right? So again, you can see I had the one gynae appointment in October, then I had one in, I think it was May, and then I had one in, I don't even know. And then eventually in October, I went back to my gynae and I just said to him, there's a pain in my left groin. I said, and he's immediately transvaginal ultrasound. He says to me, there's a mass on your left ovary. And I'm like, a what? A what on my left ovary? Now everything's just running through my head. I'm like, a year. I've been experiencing this pain for a year. I've been bringing it up with so many people, so many professionals for a year. I've been taking anti-inflammatories, resting for a year. All the signs and symptoms were there. I've been discussing it with everyone. Immediately my thoughts go to, fuck, a mass. I'm like, cancer. I'm like, a year. I've wasted a year of my time trying to figure out, and money, by the way. It was a very expensive excursion. And I'll be very honest with you, and I don't want to run anyone down because that's not who I am, but I didn't feel heard. The only time I felt heard was when I went back to my gynae in October this year. And when he said to me, there's a mass. And I didn't even need to explain all the symptoms at all. I just said to him, there's a pain in my left groin. Now, when I went to see him in October last year, that pain was not there yet. It started like 2 or 3 weeks after I went to see him, right? So then I was like, immediately blood tests. What blood tests now? CA125 blood test, ovarian cancer blood test. I was like, okay. He says the only way we're going to know what's going on in there is if we get in there. He says surgery. Let's do surgery. He did say to me, it is most likely. He's such a cool, calm, collected doctor, such a nice guy. He did say to me, chances are it's endometriosis growing into your ovary. He says, but you can never be sure until you get in there. 3.5 hours surgery, and it turns out it was stage 4 endometriosis. So it's deep infiltrating endometriosis. It was growing into areas that it should not be growing in. Hence why the blood in certain areas. It was growing in and around the ligament that connects the womb to somewhere. It was pulling down in the left groin area. And the more I left it for that year, or the more we didn't know what it was, the more it was growing and the more pain it was causing. Now, for that year, I didn't run. I lost all my fitness. Any gym workouts I did, I was in excruciating pain after the workout. Like I said, the pain came to a point where it was 24/7. I was sleeping with a pillow between my legs to try and lift the one leg up so that the pain would disappear. Anti-inflammatories, over-the-counter anti-inflammatories weren't working. And I don't like taking pain pills. I want to get to the root cause of the problem. Anyway, so we did. Now, the reason why I wanted to share this story is obviously not to run anyone down. Like I said, for me, it was so confusing as well. I'm going in there. I am a sports person, for the lack of better words. So immediately you will think that it is a sports-related injury. Therefore, let's rest. So for the good part of the year, I have been resting because I've had this niggle. But like I said, I just trusted my gut about it. And I just pushed and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed until we got the answer, until we found the solution. But what does that mean for me now? That means that over a year, I've totally lost my fitness, right? And I got to get that fitness back. And for the last 2 weeks, I've been starting to run again post-surgery, and it's been difficult physically. It has been so bloody difficult. After that first 3-kilometer run, I was like, and it wasn't even a full-on run. It was run, walk, run, walk, run, walk. I was like, no, man. I'm like, how can this be possible? And immediately I was like, no, this is going to be so difficult. But I was like, I'm going to do it. And I set myself a goal of 3 runs per week. No pressure on running them fast, slow, run, walk, run, walk. If I have to walk it, I'll walk it. The biggest thing for me was just creating, or is just creating, that consistency right now. And you know, oftentimes we have to get back into doing something difficult, or you have to start doing something difficult. And it's those initial phases or stages of starting that are the toughest, because that's also the easiest stage to give up, because it's so bloody difficult and you're not seeing progress, you're not seeing improvement. But I know after the last 2 weeks of running, I feel fantastic. From a mental perspective, I just feel good after a run. And a lot of that feeling good after a run boils down to the fact that I know I'm doing a fucking difficult thing, right? So physically, it's difficult. So whilst it's difficult physically, mentally, it's just that confidence booster that I need to get me going to do the next run, right? So again, if you're tackling anything difficult, just remember that the initial stages and phases are going to be difficult. But once you get into the swing of things, once you get into that consistency, like that consistent flow of doing something, it does become a little bit easier, right? So you've got to push through the difficult phases. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I could I could say to myself, oh, I've lost all my fitness, and I could base my goals on where I was last year running an ultra marathon, but that would be stupid because I'm not at that fitness level. I've got to work my way back to a certain fitness level where I want to be. And I know it's going to be difficult, right? So whatever goals you're working on, don't base your goals on now where you were 5 years ago, 5 months ago, or whatever it is. Base them on where you are now, like where you are currently at, and then move forward, gradually move forward and work on creating that consistency. It's going to be difficult. I know that. I'm experiencing that at the moment. It's bloody difficult, right? But it is so good from a mental perspective to know that you are doing the difficult things. And oftentimes that is the drive that you need to continue doing those difficult things. Don't let the fact that it is difficult be the thing that stops you from pushing forward. Anything we start doing or anything we have to get back into doing is going to be difficult. And it's about setting those expectations accordingly, knowing that it is going to be difficult, but knowing that you are one tough cookie and you can do difficult things. Now, there's a couple of takeaway messages from this one episode of the podcast. Number one, advocate for yourself. Like, I'm not saying run to the doctor for every single little niggle, sniffle, or cough that you do have, but also listen to your body and know your body. Become in tune with your body. So if there is something serious wrong, you can actually stand up for yourself and you can push for a second opinion or a third opinion or a fourth opinion if you must. Always, I want to say, there's a fine line between always taking it the next step, because personally, I don't run to the doctor for anything. Last year, going to the doctor was the first time I'd been to the doctor for a bloody long time. And my words to one of the doctors were, I wouldn't be sitting here if there wasn't a problem, right? And my thing is, like, it's just about knowing your body, understanding your body. And if you know that there is something not right, push for answers. That for me is the most important, especially as females, because it's such a complex system, right? Your reproductive system is such a complex thing, and you don't want to fuck around with it. And for me, my gut was always telling me that there's something not right here. There shouldn't be that niggle 24/7 in that bloody groin area. Then message number 2 is, things are going to be tough, eh? Things can be difficult. Life can throw you curveballs and lemons. What is that saying? If life hands you lemons, make a margarita. No, I think it's a lemon meringue pie. I'm not 100% sure. Make a pie. Like, at some stage this year, I think I was just like so gutful of everything. I was like, and I wasn't even annoyed or frustrated with the fact that I couldn't exercise. I think I was more annoyed and frustrated with the fact that I didn't have answers, and it just got to me mentally. And I remember on the 29th of September, the Sunday, my mom phoned me and said, your dad's in hospital. And I was like, oh shit. I'm like, I don't know if I have the mental capacity to, deal with that as well, if I'm very honest. And the 30th of September, so the Monday, was my gynae appointment. And he then said to me, there's a mass on your left ovary. That week for me was not just that week, that it took 3 weeks before we went into surgery for myself. So those 3 weeks was just, I almost lost the will to live, if I'm very honest with you. It was a whole sort of carryover of everything of the year, of not being able to run, not knowing what's going on with my health, my dad, my surgery that was looming. What are they going to find in there when they go in, and what are the biopsies going to say, and it's always going to be difficult. There's going to be difficult phases within your life. There's going to be times that you don't know how to deal with these. I had no idea how to deal with it. I was like, what am I even doing? Like, where am I? Am I Arthur or Martha? I didn't know. But the crazy thing is, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, right? And I'm at the point now where I'm running pain-free. I'm looking at my dad. He went into a step-down clinic yesterday, which is phenomenal news, and he's going to focus on his rehab. And as difficult as the year was and is, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and beautiful things happened from this very difficult year. And that's a whole different podcast episode on its own. But this difficult year has taught me so much, like so much. Have I achieved any of my goals I set out to do for the year? Absolutely not. I haven't. But I have learned so much about myself within this year, and personally I feel that I have grown in areas that I didn't even know I needed to grow in. So I know it can be so difficult when life throws you those lemons that you must make margaritas with, but just know, as difficult as it is in that moment, just know that there's always something to learn, and that even though it feels like such a struggle, growth can and probably is still taking place in the background, and it's something that you might only figure out when you do see that light at the end of the tunnel. And then message number 3 is just do the difficult things, right? Because pushing through those difficult phases, those difficult stages, whether you making a comeback with your activity, or whether you gained a little bit of weight that you want to lose again, or whether you just doing something for the first time that is difficult, push through those difficult phases, because there's something beautiful waiting for you at the end of that, after that difficult phase, right? So don't let the difficult things throw you off track. Make those difficult things the reason why you stay on track. I know that sounds silly, but by doing the difficult things, you're going to boost your confidence to want to do them even more. And then obviously just a full disclaimer that this is only a 25-minute story, and I just try to highlight it as best as possible. Obviously there's 1 or 2 little things that I didn't mention or I forgot to mention, smaller symptoms, other things like that, but that wasn't the point of this episode. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you like I usually do. Keep smiling, keep laughing, and keep being kind to one another. Much love, your friend who didn't have a topic for this podcast episode but ended up speaking for over 25 minutes. Mandy.